Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Here we go. So welcome to this week's A Coffee with Karen, cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. This is where I interview our guests. They're really going to be coming at you as either a coach, consultant or therapist from a mental, physical or spiritual perspective, or any combination of the above. So this week, John, if you'd like to share with the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I think I sort of tick all of those boxes that you just mentioned there. I'm not a qualified therapist, but I tick all the other boxes, and I've done a bit of therapy. I love it's a coffee talk. I've spent the last 10 years living in Myanmar, in Burma.
Mm-hmm.
We arrived there just before the first quasi-democratic election, and we had to leave because it's now back in, they've lost democracy and the army's taken back over. But I used to love the coffee. I used to go downtown Yangon. Yangon's a big city, 9 million people. And across from the Shangri-La Hotel, there was this little coffee shop. And the ground coffee came in a 44-gallon drum. It wasn't in a bag or a little tin. It was and he used to dig out how much I wanted. The best coffee, strong. Oh, it was seriously strong. I don't get coffee like that back in the UK anymore.
No, you're not going to get that.
That helped me get a bit spiritual, that coffee in the mornings. It did. But yes, so me. I'm from New Zealand, and like all New Zealanders, we do our OE, our overseas experience. They reckon about 60 to 70% of the population's lived overseas, which gives it a unique sort of, I don't know what it just makes New Zealand unique because everybody has got that overseas experience. The problem with New Zealand is it's around the other side of the world. Mm-hmm. So I left to do my overseas experience, which is normally about 2 years. And that was over 30 years ago. So I've lived 10 years in Europe. I lived in California for a little while. I lived in San Diego. I lived in Asia and Myanmar for 10 years and Thailand before that. And this is our second time back in the UK. My wife's British, English. So so we've been back here since we sort of had to evacuate Myanmar, which is quite disappointing. So I've brought in lots of different cultural experiences. I think there's a big difference when you go on holiday to the islands in Greece and when you actually go to live there and work there and you get out of the sort of the tourist traps and that and really understanding different cultures. So yeah, that's my sort of life history. As far as the sort of the cultural side, the spiritual side, if you like, we were working in France. My wife, we finished that, so we came back to England, and my wife goes, so we're going to go along to this seminar on over the weekend in Docklands. So she drags me along there Friday night, and there's lots of bells and whistles and lights in it, and it was all pretty neat. And the guy said, so we're gonna settle down now. We're going to turn the lights down. We're going to do some meditation, and then we're going to go on a fire walk. So luckily, my wife had a hold of my hand, because I was off. It's like, what? so yeah, we did a fire walk with Tony Robbins. And then we went on to do his mastery course in different parts of the world. We were with Tony over 9/11 in Hawaii, which was an incredible place to be. And to see what he did at that stage with the situation there.
Right.
And it's sort of, and so I really got into what he was doing, but I recognized it was Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP. So I came back to the UK, did my coaching, did my NLP, and it's sort of, and I use the NLP today in different interventions, work that I'm doing with people. But I'm very aware that it's, I'll say manipulative. We use certain words to encourage people to behave this way.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really lucky halfway through my NLP Master's training this guy too. We were running an NLP conference in Somerset, and so my colleague was running. There's about 100 people there. My colleague was sort of looking after it, and I was sort of the number 2 guy in the back there. And this guy turns up at the back of the room, and they had a quick chat. And he said, "Oh, I'm going out for a coffee." It's always coffee, isn't it, Karen? So this was a 3-day conference. He goes out for a coffee, comes back the next day, and this guy that he met, David Grove, he was in New Zealand, recognized as a genius in psychology. He wrote a lot of the formative books on autism and Asperger's. So he came in and he moved in with my colleague in Somerset here for 2 years, and we did some incredible development work with abuse victims. In the work he was doing, which is called metaphor therapy. It was quite heavy for me. I mean, it was quite heavy for all of us, but the amount of depth we were going to. So I pulled it back, and I tend to use now metaphor coaching in therapy. So metaphor is, if you have an abuse victim, they disassociate. Quite often they will remember the event, but it won't have an impact on them. Mm-hmm. It's physiologically affecting them. It affects their behavior, but they can look at it, but they sort of look at it from a third position. They look at it in the distance. It's this disassociation. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to re-traumatize them, because that's not going to be good. The unconscious, the mind doesn't want that to happen. So it'll do all sorts of things to distract, take them away from it. Metaphor therapy is working with the client to evolve the metaphor around the event that happened, so that their unconscious can deal with it and resolve it. It's a lot deeper than that sounds. That's just the simple version. The trouble is with events happen, and they either inform us or they trigger us. And if they trigger us, it's because we have an emotional hook to it. Now, if it's abuse or a vet that's come back with PTSD, if we go back to that event, it's because we remember it, because there's an emotional hook there. Mm-hmm. So part of us is fractured off. Part of our energy is holding the emotion in place. And so we're not a whole person. We can't be authentic if parts of us are stuck in the past. So this metaphor therapy helps the person's unconscious to resolve these challenges that we have. Now, thankfully, most of us don't have these traumas. We all have emotional events that have formed our character, who we are, our behaviors, the way that we experience life. And the work I was doing with David Grove, with my colleague, was going into inner child work, generational, cultural, it just fascinating, coming in from all sorts of different sort of areas. And I tend to try and do it with coaching now, because, as I said, the more the therapy side is quite heavy work, energetically and emotionally for me and the client. So I tend to do coaching, but I still tend to, people sort of come out to me. I was working with the international sports team and in Wales, and it's a sports team, and they're going on to, I'm playing England, I think. And you think it's going to be about motivation and how to get themselves in the right state of mind and positive and all this. And that was, we did all that in the morning. And I said, okay, in the afternoon, I can do one-to-ones if you've got any particular issues that you want to work on with the game. And an awful lot of them had these traumas, which was what was driving them. And I've found, and I've talked to other therapists about this, an awful lot of people that are working at elite level, business, sports, are actually, they have away from motivations. Something happened that they don't want to ever happen again.
Right.
Abuse. That's what's motivating them. And an awful lot of people at that level have that sort of that motivation, which is, of course, destructive. It's not helping them. It's helping them to reach the pinnacle of their sport, but what's it doing for them internally? It's not. Right. It's not great.
But is it? See, it's such an interesting subject, because so what I'm hearing from you is that for them to actually have achieved such a phenomenal achievement, that driving factor has been pushing them. So is it doing them? Because the way they've dealt with that particular issue, is that serving them or is that causing them damage? How do you tell?
Johnny Wilkinson kicked a drop goal for England to watch for England to win the World Cup in the rugby years and years ago in Australia. And he has a great podcast now. He talks about the mental health issues of it. What part did he enjoy the most? He enjoyed the getting up there, but the actual game, the drop kick he got, and then the problem he had the morning after. That's when it all started to come up for him, because it was like, now what do I do?
Oh.
His whole identity, his whole drive to, and I'm definitely not saying that I don't know anything about his history and his background, but as an example, after that pinnacle, that event, suddenly it was all gone. His identity was tied up so much in that. His drive to achieve was so much tied up on that when he achieved it, or if you're a footballer and you lose your position, you get benched, or you lose your position with the team, the hole that you fall into can be a lot deeper. Michael Phelps, the Australian swimmer, went into all sorts of mental health issues when he'd won so many gold medals. He's like, now what else is it?
Now what? Yeah.
And now what? And it was a lot deeper hole than you or me, who wouldn't have that pinnacle, that gold medal, or that level of achievement. But so much of us,
it's the attachment to that thing, rather than being you.
It's the attachment that's helping them deal with the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So when that attachment to that achievement's achieved,
what else?
Then the trauma comes back. And we're all thank goodness we don't all have traumas like that, but most of us are more strongly driven by away from values than towards values. So somebody like Richard Branson is likely, and I'm only guessing here, is likely driven by his towards values. He wants to achieve this, but it's not for him. He's not achieving more money or a better aeroplane. He's doing it for the greater good. Most of us are more driven by away from values. When I was really young, my father telling me I'm not good enough. So I then spend the rest of my life trying to show him that I am good enough.
Right.
And that's on an unconscious level, because it's something we want to get away from, that little boy that was told he wasn't good enough.
Yeah, sure.
And
why do you think? I mean, is that so? Would you say that is the majority of people work like that? Because it seems so backwards, doesn't it? You'd think we would be driven by the goals
we want to achieve,
rather than trying to avoid pain. But I would agree that there's definitely seems to be more of a driving force, and that's why. Why is it like that?
It's a fascinating question, and I think, for all the negatives and the bad things that happen in COVID, I think the silver lining is that people are starting to come out and they're going, I don't want to go back to living in that fear, but my life's, my wife used to spend 45 minutes on the bus to work and 45 minutes back from work. An hour and a half of her day was to get to a job. Do I want to do? Does she want to do that anymore? So people are starting to go, oh, this is about me. Nietzsche said, the most important thing in your life is to master your life. But what we do is we go, oh, I want to do things. I need to go to school, to get to university, to get the degree, to get the job, to get the loan, to buy the house, to get the best partner. We spend our lives doing stuff related to what's happening around us outside.
Yes.
The environment dictates to us.
We've been taught from a very young age that this is the way to do it, to leave the house that you spent all your money getting all day. I mean, it's when we look at it, take a step back and look at it, it's crazy.
Or the car that you spend so much money on that sits in the car park all day, and you drive home and it sits in the driveway all day. It's a lot of money.
How did
But
we
it's
get
not.
here?
It's not just that we've been brought up. This is conditional. So our parents did the same thing. Our grandparents, way back generations. You 14, 15. You worked in the coal mine. That's what you did. You worked for somebody else to achieve somebody else's goals, somebody else's aims, and what they would do is they sort of, well, if you work really hard, you'll get this house and you'll have this safety. So it's not my conditioning, it's historical conditioning.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so deeply embedded. It's cultural unconsciousness. It's something happened to my grandfather. He affected and changed his behavior the same way. So it's historical like that. And then there's lots of suggestions that it comes through our DNA as well.
Wow.
Generations back, this happens. So we started to do things this way, and it started to influence what happens to me in my life. And we get taught, we get conditioned to look outside, to look for validation. Michael Phelps got gold medals given to him by other people because he achieved things, and he fell into the mental health because is this all there is? And he managed to, with a fantastic coach, turn this around and start to compete against himself. How well am I doing today compared to yesterday? And he went on to win more gold medals. But it was because he started to go internally. Wow. And this is the difference when we're really young. So when tell me if I'm talking too fast because I get excited about this.
No. You're great. Carry on. Love
when you're really young, and this is this is sort of post-conception, but still in the womb, where we can't think, we can't critically think. Our mind's evolving, and it's completely open. So it's quite egotistical, but from a different perspective. It's egotistical because everything's one. There isn't mum and dad or the siblings or me and you. So when things happen, they happen to us. So when I'm in the womb, if mum and dad have a fight, it's happening to us. And that imprints on this young, evolving, developing mind. And right up until 2 or 3, when the baby's mind is still running very much in the theta phase, so babies sleep a lot. There isn't this separation. So things happen, and it happens to them because we're all one. And and I'll use the word non-duality because we're all one. And then we get to sort of, let me see if I've got I'll just show you this. It's quite interesting. So if I show a baby a book and I say, what color is that? They say red. And I say, so what color is that? And they say white. And I say, okay, so what color are you seeing? And they say, I'm seeing red. And then if you ask them, what color am I seeing? They'll say, oh, you're seeing red. Because there's no separation. Yeah. They believe, they understand, their mind is, we all are the same. But then we get to that 2 or 3. So when at a very young age, we start to then recognize that, okay, my mum is somebody different, or my dad, or my mum is the one that feeds me. So, and that's that initial start to go from non-duality to duality, me and you, this separation. But the mind's so open and it's so influenceable that if I'm sort of, I made this thing with my Lego and it was really great and it looked a little bit like a starship for a 3-year-old. And I ran into the dad came home from work and he's got all this shit at work and he's struggling to get the work finished for the end of the month. He's got to reach his figures. He won't get the bonus, and the bonus is going to buy the kids Christmas presents. So he's got all this crap that he's bringing into the house. But the 3-year-old has got this little toy that he's just evolved, and his dad said, no, I'm busy. Go away. I don't want to know about it. Now, dad's forgotten about it, but that's imprinted on the baby's mind. Why am I being rejected? And then this duality starts to come in. It's not, there's me and you. It's like, I have to protect myself. And this is imprinted on, and it's like an onion. This is the core of an emotional event. It's not a trauma, but at that age, of course, it is. It's a core. The mind gets, as we get older, events happen. The mind looks for patterns. Something happens when they're 10 or 15 or 20. Oh, it's like that. Now the unconscious goes, oh, it's like that, and it puts a layer on the onion. The emotion becomes more solid. It becomes more reinforced. The actual event's long forgotten. It's validating it again and again. The event's been forgotten, but the actual emotional is a hook there. So this young boy at 25 is sitting in the boardroom, and the boss comes in and slams his hand on the fist and says, "This isn't good enough." What comes up? The emotion comes up.
Emotion.
Now the 25-year-old can't remember the event that happened when he was a kiddie, but he knows the emotion and what happens at that 25, that kiddie. There's a behavior comes from that. Now, at 25, that behavior won't be the same, but it'll be similar. So it might be sort of, oh, I'll shut up and I won't say anything. Well, now at 25, that's affecting his career because he's not answering the boss or changing his behavior. It affects us later in life. It affects all of us because, thank goodness, most of us had traumas, but all of us have had these emotional events that guide and influence the behaviors in later life.
Right.
And that makes us who we are today.
But why does it not seem to, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but why does it appear to happen so much like that for the more negative? And there seems to be less of that going on for the positive, or have I got that all wrong? It's that perception.
I think that it's interesting perception. We could go into that a little bit deeper, Karen. I think the mind is more looks for the negative. The reticular activating system, our RAS, the reptilian part of our mind, the first part that evolves, is there to watch for danger. So, through millennia, if we're in the forest, it's sort of it watches out for things that might hurt us. Yeah. So I think that partially tends us towards the negative. But do you think that Richard Branson's parents said, "No, you can't do that. No, step at the table. No, we're not going to talk about that"? I bet you they didn't. I bet you they sat down. They said, "So what did you do today? Tell me about what you did." Your parents, your carers have such an influence at that young life. Remember when you're open and there's a great story about this guy. He's at work and he works hard at work, but he has a balanced life. He has a great home life. And one of the new managers comes along and he's just started in the company and he's working with them and he realized that this guy seems quite balanced. So he says, I'd quite like to, let's go out for a drink. And he says, "No, let's go home. I'll come home. We'll have dinner at home." So they go home, they get out of the car, they're walking up the drive, and this guy, there's a tree on the side of the walkway, and he stands by the tree and he rubs the leaves, just for a minute, just for a couple of seconds. And he and he gets in and he has a great time at home with the family, and the new manager sort of gets on with the kids, and the kids are quite, they talk about things and they have that discussion around the table, and he leaves and he goes back home and he thinks about this all day or all night, and the next day he says, that was fantastic, but why did you rub the tree? Why did you rub the leaves on the tree before you went in? And he said, "I have all this stress and all this pressure and stress at work. I don't want to take those home, so I leave them on the tree."
Oh.
How many parents can change their children at those young ages if they didn't take the crap from work, from life, which it's there, it's going to happen. We didn't put them on our children because the kids are so influenceable at that young age.
Right.
So I think few of us have had parents like Richard Branson, and I'm alluding to that. I don't know what his parents were like. I remember from his book, he had a great relationship with his mum. And how many of us, our parents, they weren't equipped to deal with the pressures of life.
Well, when I was young, they hadn't been taught this, right? They
absolutely.
So their level of awareness was as such, just like past the conditioning of our culture, if you like. I say culture. You're from New Zealand, but you've travelled everywhere. It's still the Western way the conditioning is I would take a guess at very, very similar in that kind of structure. So
Absolutely.
this
Absolutely.
is the issue. So really,
Wonderful.
it's all down to our level of awareness, and that people can change. They can change this, and they can change it for their children, and we can
It's
be.
not easy. It's not easy to change. I think COVID's is changing at big time now. People are going, this is not good enough. I don't want to carry on like this. And young children can be so much influenced by their parents,
Yeah.
or mentors. And twins grow up and they have the same life, or they can even grow up apart. They have the same life, but there's so much similarities, but there's differences as well. Because an event happens, if there's a car accident, there's 5 witnesses, the police will get six reports of it.
Yep.
Because we all see things differently, because our reticular activating system, our consciousness is aware of certain things. Our unconscious is aware of everything. So everyone has different patterns. So yes, it'd be phenomenal if people started to become more self-aware, started to work on mastering their lives. But of course, it's not easy.
Well,
I'm
a
still
lot of
worried
people
about what
won't even know. They won't even know that they've got it. I don't want to say wrong, but most people wouldn't even be aware that there was any of this
Absolutely.
conditioning causing harm, right? It's
They're
such a
trying to deal with their own. They're struggling to deal with their own shit, and I think the world's. Can I say that on the radio?
Yeah.
The world's getting harder, and
Yeah.
it's getting more pressure, and it's more stuff going on. And I was talking to somebody the other night, and she's got a teenage daughter, and we're talking about education system, and her mum's like, you need to go to school and get good grades so you can go to university, and her daughter's, as youngsters are today, but Elon Musk didn't, and Bill Gates didn't, and why do I need to go to school? No, I know when I was that age, I would have A, not had that information, B, never said that to my parents. So parents have got all this stress of life, and now they want to do the best for their children, but their children are much more switched on today. So how do you deal with that? It's not easy, and I think people are so much influenced by their peers, by the people around them. And if I go to the pub on Saturday and we talk about the weather and the local football team, I support Southampton, so we always lose. It's going to be negative, and these are the people that I'm consistently in front of.
Right.
And I think it was even Henry Ford that said, tell me the person's 5 closest friends, and I'll tell you who the person is. The people around you, and the people that affect the way that you grow up, the way that you see life, the way that you experience life, and the way that you're going to interact with your children. So the first thing that we need to do is to look at our peer group. Is this peer group supporting me? I have this peer group that I work with, that I'm on, and they're mostly in Australasia, so Australia and New Zealand. And we talk about a lot of the self-development work and that sort of thing. And it's on Friday night for them. It's okay for me because it's Friday morning. And I'm like, guys, it's Friday night. Don't you have friends to go out to? And they're like, what? We're going to go to the pub and drink beer, and I can sit here and talk about all this stuff. So they sit at home. So that peer group is supporting, and they're the two most important things that help us in life are growth and contribution. When we're growing, we're positive, we're evolving. We're supposed to grow as people. And when we can contribute, somehow helping society, whatever that contribution is, they're the most important drivers. But most of us are stuck in the drive of trying to sit in certainty. We want to know what happened yesterday is going to happen today, and it's going to happen tomorrow. COVID sort of showed us all that we live in a house of cards. And suddenly, no, you've got to stay at home. Oh, and suddenly, if you work in tourism, you probably don't have a job. So we tried to live in certainty, but it all sort of disappeared on us. Conversely, we also like a bit of uncertainty, a bit of excitement in our lives, but not too much.
I mean, there are different needs. I suppose everybody has different ones, but I think what COVID has done, from my sort of outlook, is that, really there was never any certainty. There is no certainty
It
in
disappeared.
anything. It's a
Absolutely.
myth.
But we tried to live in it. We tried to.
Yes,
We really want certainty. It's
they
comfortable.
want it. But I think the realization that,
It's not there.
there is, it was a myth.
Yep.
So hopefully the good thing that will come out of that is that, okay, if the, that safety net wasn't there anyway, and look what happened. So now let's go out and do something different. I hope that's what comes out. For
Well,
some,
it's sort of. I think people are. They're not going out. They're going. I need to do something different, and it needs to come within. Nietzsche said, "You need to master yourself."
Oh,
That's the
they've
first
got that,
thing in
then
life.
they've got it. Go within.
And that's a journey. It's not going on a Tony Robbins course for the weekend. It's a life journey that we go on. And then you've got certainty, uncertainty there, but people also look for significance. They want to be somebody.
Yeah.
And that's ego. And we want love. The problem is that, when you're the baby in the crib and you cry, mum comes in or your carer comes in and they give you love, and it's unconditional love. But then very quickly after that, a couple of years later, mum's got other things and other stresses and other things to deal with. The love becomes conditional. So we spend our lives looking for that unconditional love. And even if you have a partner, they might love you. Like my wife, she loves me unless I don't do the dishes. And then it becomes a little bit like, I don't know about that. So we try to get these things that are not all in our control. The certainty was a myth. The uncertainty is good, but we don't always want to live in uncertainty because it's uncomfortable. And we want significance, but significance is given to us by other people. Michael Phelps got those gold medals, and then he sort of, and then he had all sorts of problems because he was looking outside himself for significance. We want the love.
Sometimes that's the, I would say, choose my words here, not the problem with the self-development arena, but what I have found is I feel that I've got it wrong for so many years because it was all about your thoughts. You've got to think positive, or your thoughts become things. It was all thought, which is all ego mind. And the final realization that, that's actually completely backward, and it's actually here. It's being heart-centered. Actually, it is when you go within, and it's actually when the thoughts stop. Or I call it I say I'm practicing my unthinking, because it all takes practice, right? Because
yes,
it's never going to happen just going from one Tony Robbins event or one. I feel like I've been studying this for 20 years and I've only finally, I'll never get to it, but I thought sort of finally, had my aha moment. And it's like, I was totally getting it all wrong. Because the thinking seems to come from, again, the conditioning of schooling. We've been conditioned. We've got to hold this information. We've got to think. Ego mind, rather than go within. Trust is within us.
It's so conditioned into us. It's all about go to school to learn stuff. Now that this teenager I was talking about a minute ago, she's like, but the stuff I'm learning at school's crap. Elon Musk didn't need it. And I work with a few teachers, and there's lots of coaching we've done in the medical field, because medicine, doctors and nurses, they want to help people, not give them pills. And teachers want to help kids, not give them the curriculum, which was appropriate for 100 years ago, but is not appropriate for today.
It all needs.
But we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned into this. The authority, somebody outside us, the government, will give us a pill. Right? What would Neo have? The red pill or the red pill or the blue pill? The red pill is going to carry on giving responsibility away. The problem, I think, one of the big problems with the self-development industry is that they give you prescriptions. Do it this way. Follow this way. So do it the way that Tony Robbins does it, and you'll get enlightenment, or whatever Tony Robbins got. Hopefully millions of dollars, but nobody's quite achieved that side of it. And so much of self-development is, and it's really useful. It's really good if you recognize that a prescription is how he did it. Then now
Yes.
Tony Robbins, if he went back to when he was 10, he wouldn't be able to reproduce it. It's a one-off prescription. So that the self-development industry needs to put more weight on the fact that these are the tools. So when you go in, figure out which tools work for you. So Neuro-Linguistic Program, NLP is great for some people. You've got to have a really good NLP coach, and it works for some people. But a lot of people, we showed an example years ago. We were in Somerset and we did an exercise in front of university students and lecturers to stop smoking. We had 6 people. If it takes more than 60 seconds, you're not doing it right. That's when I recognized that NLP is manipulative. And 5 of them we stopped. Unfortunately, the one that I was working with, she wasn't going to stop, but it very quickly came to the surface that it was much deeper than smoking. Smoking's a distraction for something else going on.
Right. But isn't that the same for everything, pretty much?
Again, yeah, absolutely. Do it my way. Follow the prescription, and you'll stop smoking. Well, no. Some people may work with hypnotists, really good hypnotists or NLP coaches. But what it is taking it inside and saying, okay, what's going to work for me? That's a tool that's worthwhile. Okay, and no, that one doesn't work. And this, I think, is why it's a journey, because there's so much, there's so many different interventions that can be done. And the thing that I love about what I do is that with the metaphor therapy is that I don't know the metaphor that the client's building. It's in their head.
Right.
So what I use is something called clean language. Clean language isn't not swearing. Clean language is it's not using my words. So it's not me influencing with the words that I say. So when I'm working with a client, I will only use their words and a dozen particular sentences that we have, because we influence a person just by being there. I remember years ago, and it's happening in Asia now. If I was watching TV and the guy came on they had an ad for dentists for toothpaste, the guy would be in a white coat. Well, that's an authority form. It doesn't work now in the West, but back 25 years ago, the white coat showed authority. So they're influencing us by the imagery.
Yes.
So when I say, when I'm working with a client and I say, so what needs to happen? That's influencing. So when I'm talking about influence, I'm talking on that sort of level. So I would say, and what would you like to have happen? Same sentence, but delivered a completely different way. Now I'm still going to have a slight influence there. But when you're as a coach, when you're taking away those influences, those projections, the client starts to go internally into their own unconscious and starts to evolve and develop their metaphor, their understanding. And as a coach, I'm never going to have any concept of that.
Right.
Any why question that I ask is my stuff. It's my projection. And then the client has to ask me, has to answer me. So they have to think about, what do they mean? What does he mean by asking that question? So it becomes a coach-led relationship. So we have so much influence on coachees, people that we're coaching. We have so much influence on other people that we don't intend. 90% of our communication is non-verbal. When I work with clients, not very often, but now and then when I've worked one face-to-face with a client to a level, I coach in silence. So they don't talk, because talking means that I'm becoming part of their system. It's hard on me because I have to know the questions to drop, the right questions at the right time for the client. The last guy I did it with, it was 20 minutes. He wrote 4 pages. He didn't say anything. He just wrote. So I had less influence on the system, because self-development's all about learn this and follow this, and
And
you
do
follow
this.
this prescription, and you'll get sorted out.
Yeah.
And it's not like that. They need to pull back and say, these are the skills. Let's have a practice so that you understand how to use it, and then see how it works for you. Meditation and journaling are where the reflection comes in.
Right.
And that's where this stuff goes deep. And that's where you start to go internally. Most self-development isn't going internally, and it sort of touches on it a little bit.
It's too
And
superficial.
it's sort of,
It's sort of like, I mean, I shouldn't have said that I'd got it wrong for 20 years, but I feel that maybe I heard that information at that time because of my level
where
of
you
awareness.
were. Absolutely.
And then, it's changed. So I suppose, like horses for courses, there is a coach or a therapy or a style or a method or a tool for everyone, wherever they're at
different
time.
times. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
but then the real work needs to be like what you've just said about them going inwards. Yep. So you're guiding, you're getting,
absolutely.
It's them to do the work. The coach doesn't do the work. It's got to be them that's got to do the work. So you're asking to dig in for them to go in deep. Brilliant.
Absolutely. It's guiding, not influencing, and it allows them to go where they need to go.
Because they know.
Not where you think they should go. Unconsciously, they know, absolutely. But the trouble is the conscious gets in the way. And no, that's silly. Consciously, my ego's not going to let me go there. Start to allow the unconscious to come out. I quite often ask coaches, so I do retreats, 7-day retreats.
Where?
We work through this stuff.
Where do you do these?
We've got... We don't do them very often because it's really deep stuff. We've got one going on in Spain this week. We'll hopefully have one in Europe towards the end of this year. Right. But the question I ask coaches is, how long do you leave between the questions? And some coaches go, well, they look at their watch and they go 2 minutes. And the silence is where the information is. On these retreats, the average is 30 minutes between a question.
Wow.
That's the average. The record's 5 hours.
Wow.
It's hard work on me. That's why I'm saying I don't do it that often, because I can't go and make a cup of coffee. I've still got to hold the space.
So and that's what you're doing. You're holding space.
Absolutely.
Love that. And that is, again, you've been conditioned. I've been conditioned.
Yep.
And it would be the moment... Listeners can't see me doing that zip across my mouth. The moments when I that's where the power is.
Absolutely. It takes a little bit of work with the client, because their ego jumps in and they go, oh, this is uncomfortable. So they say something just because they want to fill the void. But once you get comfortable with that silence and you can go with your thoughts and get them out. So the process might be, so how could you express that? Can you, do you want to write it or draw it, or do you want to dance, or do you want to go for a walk? And because, we're not all visual, we don't all need to write stuff down. We can draw paintings, and 90% of our communication is non-verbal. The information that comes out in a person's painting is incredible. And you're guiding them to look more into the drawing that they've done, to pull out what it is that is within them.
Wow.
It's fascinating work. And I coach coaches now, because a lot of coaches are still stuck in this, I've got to say something, this ego, because they still have these emotional events that they're hooks. Now they won't remember, that little boy won't remember that event. Is his father putting him down or telling him he's not good enough. But he will project that behavior onto the people around him.
Yeah.
He'll project that behavior onto his clients, and they're his shadows. So I do shadow work. And shadow work is looking at the things that we don't know, don't want to know about, can't remember, or later in life, things that we repress. So if I'm really young, I'm 10 years old and I'm falling in love with a 10-year-old with this girl in the playground, and she tells me off or insults me, that's going to bring up another emotion. Now, I might not at 25 remember that event, but that feeling, that emotion will come up. Now, that is a heart-centered emotion, and that's where we repress on a spiritual level. That's something we're suppressing in our heart chakra. So when we're doing shadow work, we're not just doing the mind. There's as we said, the inner child work, the things that have been put into us from our culture, from our parents, from our grandparents. There's the generational things. There's all these different events, and we're all going to have very different life experiences, very different events that we can't remember. We don't want to remember. We've repressed them for whatever reason. They're not in our conscious. They're not going to come up. And this is something that we explore on the training that I do. We explore at a metaphor level, that we explore with paintings, we explore with meditation, actually meeting your shadow self. But again, these are what I do. I give people different experiences, different training in different areas, because different things will bring up different things for people. We're all individuals, we all have a different patterns running in our minds. And that very young boy, that happened to him, that pattern's been set up, that core, that onion's been set up, and all these layers come on up into later life. And this is what all needs to be dissolved, integrated.
Right.
For me, for a person to reach authenticity, you need to be whole. You need to accept your shadow side, all the things that you've repressed. Now, these things are not consciously available to you. They're unconscious. You have to go deeper.
So how does a coach, so say a coach, they're hearing this, your target audience are other coaches, but how would they then even know why would they even think that they might need your help if it's unconscious? How would you explain to them, share with them?
The first flag is, if you use why as a coach, you need to look at it. Because what you're trying to do with why with the client? Why did you do that? Why not do this? So lots of coaches can be quite directive. So goal setting is, right, what's the goal? Let's make sure we've got it clear, and let's really nail it down. So how can we measure that? What's the timing on that? That's all projection.
Yeah.
That's all a prescription that the coach, and I did the same thing when I first did my coaching. They gave me the prescription to do it. Well, if it's Richard Branson, he's going to say, yeah, okay, right, that's it. And this is the time, and this is what I need, and he's off. But most of us are not Richard Branson, and we're sort of like, well, yeah, I'm really going to do that. But in scarcity is something that really comes up with people, not consciously again. They want to do something. They want to get a better job. Not to get a better job. It's to get the accolades, the validation, the significance from other people. But it's because I really don't want to live like I did when I was with my parents, when I was young and we struggled and we didn't have food on the table every day. So where Richard Branson takes goal setting and he's off, and that's his motivation. My motivation might be, a lot of people's motivation is, this is what I don't want, and it might not even be on a conscious level. It's just, that ice cream looks better because it tastes better, but it's because, I never had ice cream when I was a kid.
Yeah, sure. So
their motivation is this scarcity, this away. But a coach projects so much of the things, the skills they've learned, but also their shadows come up, and they're not consciously aware of coming out in the behavior. And why is quite often a question of something that the coach is uncertain of. So they're trying to prompt the coachee, their client, but it's something that's coming up in them as well, for them, about something in their lives. Now, they're not consciously aware of this. It's just sort of, it's something that's come up with the client. It's a great line. it's that great line. Ken Wilber said, events happen, they either inform us or they trigger us. If I'm working with a coach, and the why question quite often is a trigger for myself. What's it triggering within me? The world's a mirror. I'm sure you're familiar with that one. We're not going to see anything around us that isn't within us. The world's within us. So the world outside us reflects what's going on inside. So if a coachee says something that creates a question in me, it's really a question in me. It's not about them. They're just mirroring it back to me. Luckily, we're not all sort of got these shadows and these traumas and emotional events that stop us from going through life. But it's like the little boy, when he was young, it was a major event for him. It set that pattern up. It wasn't a trauma, but at that stage it was. But at 25, what's it doing for him? It's stopping him speaking on stage, maybe. It's stopping him pushing another idea to the boss. It's curtailing his career.
It's certainly not serving. So if there are any coaches out there that are feeling a little bit stuck, then maybe, is that where you're sort of coming from?
Absolutely.
Want to step out and go to that next level, then maybe it's not the things that you're doing, the prescription, as you said, maybe it has got to go, they've got to go deeper. Is that what I think it's from you?
It's not the next level. It's not transcending. I think what's happened with COVID, people are going, it's not all about the validation and the significance and the money. There's more to life. So it's moving. I think I get a sense, and I talked with different groups, that there is a raising in consciousness. People are becoming more aware there is more to life than having things and doing things. It's more about, how can I make my life better? I talk with people quite often, I'm not getting on with the family. I wish they'd do this better. I have these arguments with my partner. I wish she'd do this or wish he'd do that. You can't make people. You have no license to make people do things. Gandhi said, be the example you want to see in the world. And I think more coaches are moving in, becoming aware of that. Or maybe it's just my algorithm and I meet more coaches like that. So I'm being a little bit anecdotal, but they're more starting to go, there is more to life than setting out a grow model or a smart model. There's something deeper going on here. So moving more into a spiritual side. No, I'm not talking about going all the way, but maybe there is something more internally going on here. And that little kiddie, that youngster at 25, he doesn't get the promotion. He doesn't get what he really wants. And it's in his head, but it's in his heart as well. But we have this heart-head disconnection. So of course, he gets to 35 and he's got the promotion and he's getting there, but it's not getting any easier. Wow. And I had a podcast on Sunday, and we were talking about the CEO of Deloitte in Southeast Asia, and he was a workaholic. He worked 50, 60, 70 hours a week in the business, getting Deloitte set up, and he had limited, almost no relationship with his family, but he was driven in his work, and that was his significance. That was his achievement. And he realized that, he was coming up to retirement. So he got all these things in line to get his retirement in line with, reconnect with his family, with his wife, with his kids. But his body's like, oh, it's all changed. We can relax. And he had a heart attack.
There you go.
So he achieved, Peter Sage says, he's one of the richest guys in the graveyard.
It's frightening. And I hear that a lot. In fact, something similar has happened to somebody sort of close to me, and it does. You realise that we can all find the balance now.
Absolutely, but our conscious
find a way to
preferably yesterday, but now's better. Now's just as good.
Yeah, we should have had balance, and I will put my hands up to that. I will. Because again, level of awareness. I thought you had to work hard for money. I thought you had to
That's what we've been conditioned. We sort of, this is what we have to do, but we can suppress things. You can't stop your breathing, but you can hold your breath for a while. But we can just sort of get myopic and focused on the job and get so focused in there that we forget about our bodies. I remember years ago, I used to work, and we get into work, we'd have a coffee, discuss work, and then get on with work, and then go on holiday. And the first couple of days of holiday, I'd get a steaming headache because I wasn't drinking the coffee, and you'd always get a bit of a cold, because your body's like, oh, we're on holiday.
Yeah.
So your unconscious is like, right, I can refocus all the stuff that I was dealing with, the stress, to recover my body, and you get a cold, and you get to 50 or 60, and you've got so much stress in your life that when you do actually start to slow down, your body goes, I'm worn out. I've had enough. I can't handle it. So yeah, living in the now, recognizing I need this balance. So going up the front drive and leaving all your problems on the tree.
Love that.
Maybe not good for the tree, but leave your problems on the tree because your family doesn't want them.
The tree is cleverer than us. The tree's got all sorts of probably other systems where, again, it can just filter everything back out. So yeah, the trees.
We all need a tree like that. We all need one like that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we need to be more like the tree to be able to just filter any of that stuff out. Yeah.
They do say the strongest trees don't grow in the best soil. They grow in the worst conditions, in the wind, with the greatest sort of pressure and stress. I think pressure and stress is good for us. It helps us evolve, but it's got to be the right
points, or it has its, but just not for too long. It's the
absolutely
consistency of it. We've been again designed or told or taught, or that, especially England, I would say, stiff upper lip and all that, and it's you've got to just no, we're not designed at all for that. We're designed to deal with stress in the moment and then be like a little little baby deer.
Because stress creates adrenaline.
And then go back to eating and forget about it.
Absolutely. They've got it all sussed. Well, I don't know. We came back from Myanmar and we brought a street dog, Burmese street dog, back with us. She doesn't get on with the local dogs at all. Quite different.
She knows she's not at home.
No, they're just different. They're not the same. She's a proper street dog. They're domestic. So no, the thing with stress is that we were designed so that we were ready. If a lion jumped out at us in the jungle, the adrenaline fired in. It went to our muscles. We could run fast.
That's right.
Well, we don't have. You're not going to.
Most people aren't using it for that, are they? They're not going to.
You're not going to meet a tiger when you're sitting having your coffee.
No.
But and one of the many downsides of COVID was it created more stress because people are having to sit in front of the laptop just in case the boss, they have to be there.
Yes.
And so it's not stress to run away from a tiger. It's just that little drip, drip, drip constantly of stress.
Isn't it? It's the perception of a stress. It's nothing real. But physiologically, it's still having the same cellular responses.
And it's always there.
Always.
It's always there.
Well, thank you so much. Absolutely fascinating. It's interesting. I came on and I really, I didn't know where this conversation was going to go. Absolutely love it. And I really think that, yes, and I think your target audience definitely is going to be other coaches, because the way I have, even just doing this show, people coming on, they've tended to gone into the coaching world because they've had some kind of challenge that they've overcome and found some modality to heal. And then their natural response would be to want to share that with the world so that they don't suffer the same things that they have. So I think other coaches are always looking to improve and to go in a different way. So if you're stuck All John's details will be below. So for those who are just listening on the radio or on the podcast, can you share what's your website? How do people get in touch?
I'm 21st century. I don't have a website.
How do people get hold of you if they're just listening?
My Facebook is Walking with Your Shadow.
There you go. Walking with Your Shadow. Thank you so much for your time, John. For the rest of the listeners, I will be back next week. Bye for now.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkle